Hello and welcome to Full Court Press, the first and most likely last episode of this podcast that we're starting for the Forum. My name is Chris Murphy, and to my right is Colton Poole.
Hello.
No, don't do that. And we are sports reporters at the Forum Communications, and we'll be using this podcast to kind of talk about the stuff that's going on in the area in sports outside of the Bison, who I think I talked about enough. Anyway. So first things first, we're going to recap North Dakota football, and I'm going to hand that over to Colton. Colton, recap North Dakota football.
Yeah, some major matchups in the area. Obviously, Hillsboro, Central Valley, knocking off Ellendale. Edgeley-Colne, obviously that was a really big game, number 2 ranked in the state, but obviously really surprising to beat them 48-14. Ellendale was ranked number 1 in the state leading up to the game.
That was on the road, too.
So really surprising. And Grant Skager rushing for 314 yards and 5 touchdowns. Huge game for them. So number 1 versus number 2, that's always going to get a lot of attention. But to win like they did was really surprising and really a huge statement for Hillsboro Central Valley. And then obviously Wyndmere Lidgerwood also had a huge game in the area. They defeated Thompson 30-21 this last weekend and are now still undefeated. It looks like 8-0 overall in for the season. So huge games for them. And that's just kind of in our area. Looking at the Fargo specifically, it's crazy to say, but West Fargo is still dominating in football. Yet again, they defeated Fargo South 39-7. And huge day for pretty much everyone in that game. Alex Sell had 3 touchdowns. Andy Gravdahl hitting Joe Pistorius again and again for long passes. And honestly, they're probably likely going to stay undefeated for the regular season and be the number 1 seed in the out of the East in the
Is that
Class
a guarantee?
3.
Is that a guarantee I hear?
Not a guarantee, no, but as close of a guarantee as you can get. So,
who has the best opportunity to beat West Fargo?
Are you looking regular season or in the playoffs?
Is anybody going to beat them?
Right now, you'd have to. They'd be the favorites by a long shot, I think, because, I mean, if you're looking at teams that they could be going against in the West, Bismarck Century is probably the one that you'd guess. And Century losing to West Fargo Cheyenne at the beginning of the season, 16-14, and then West Fargo beating Cheyenne in a blowout. You kind of have to look at mutual opponents when you're kind of guessing, how games are like that are going to go. And West Fargo has been beating everyone, including Bismarck and Legacy, I believe. So, yeah, it's. We had these conversations 2 years ago and last year when we thought that West Fargo would be the favorites, and they've lost in the semifinals the last 2 years. So you would say that they're the favorites, but I mean anything can happen. So
okay, Minnesota's turn now. I'll take it from there. Thank you, Colton. Anyway, there's 3 things I want to talk about with Minnesota football. Otter Tail Central is 6-0. They've given up 34 points on the season. Their points against average is 5.7 a game, which ties them for 3rd in the entire state. But behind them in the QRF is Ada Borup, Norman County West, whose points against average is 3.8, which puts them at 2nd in the state. And the interesting thing about this is Otter Tail Central used to be in 2A, and they moved down to 1A. And Ada Borup, Norman County West didn't used to be a co-op. And Ada Borup, they used to be in 9-man, and so now they've come up to 1A. So these 2 teams are kind of meeting together in the same section, and yeah, it looks like they're going to meet each other in the section championship despite not being in this class at all. Barnesville got their leading rusher back in Brady Tweeten. He was out with a broken ankle for the first 5 games, and the Trojans went 5-0 and stayed ranked 2 without him, and then he comes back and he rushes for 141 yards and 2 touchdowns on 15 carries and had an interception on the defense. So that sets up a battle of undefeateds against Jacob Fetter and Donnie Logren and company in Holly. So those two teams will face each other next week, and they're both 6-0, and they're both ranked. And so that's number 2. And number 3, I want to talk about Moorhead and Otis Waya. They've won 5 in a row, and in the last 3 games, he's rushed for, I believe, 728 yards and 9 touchdowns on 53 carries. He had 235 in the first half of last week, and he's just on fire. This is kind of a trend with Moorhead football teams. Is kind of like they feel out for the first few weeks, which running back's going to be the guy, and then they kind of find their guy and they go with him. And Otis Waya is just a madman right now.
And you had a fantastic feature about him. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Don't ever interrupt me again. But anyway, he's got a good backstory too. I mean, people have kind of jumped on him. The funny thing with Otis Waya is I remember a few years ago when he was a freshman, he came up to me in the hallway when I was getting ready to do a basketball interview, and he shook my hand and he said, "Hi, Mr. Murphy. My name is Otis Waya, and you'll be interviewing me a lot." And I thought that was funny because he was a freshman, and I had already known who he was. I had seen him on the football field a little bit, and I'd seen him on the basketball court, and I knew him as the short, really fast guy. And it was just funny. I really thought I loved that confidence that he displayed, and he's matured a lot, and he's become a lot. He's just matured. Rather than running side to side, he runs forward. He trusts his strength now, and then like I said, he's got a good backstory with his mom giving birth to him at 15 in Ghana in a refugee camp, and those two coming over together, and him getting in some trouble when he was younger, and her signing him up for football to kind of get his mind straight, and football kind of changed him. And then she moved him away from the Minneapolis area when she felt he wasn't mature enough to handle that, and football has completely changed him. And Moorhead Spuds coach Kevin Feeney, he's called the father figure, and he's completely kind of revamped Otis. And Otis is, I think there's a lot of. He's very humble, and I think he's kind of realizing. I think it's a shock to him now that he's realizing that this football thing could be his future. And I know UND and NDSU, there's whispers of him going after Otis, and he certainly has the talent. And he's just been incredible the last bunch of weeks, and that's what Moorhead's been running with right now. So that's all I got on the Minnesota side.
Awesome. So now, because I think what we kind of want to do with this show is talk about the things that maybe don't necessarily make the paper, or some right. So we're kind of be shifting gears here to reviewing the East Region tennis meet in North Dakota, and kind of previewing the state tournament meet, or the state tournament rather. And so, Chris, I know that you got a chance to watch Davis Lawley
Fargo South.
From Fargo South.
Yep.
In the singles championship versus
on
Joe
Saturday. Yes.
Joe Besky.
Besky. And Lawley is as good as advertised. I mean, the thing that's funny, which I didn't find out till Saturday, was so he's one thing to be undefeated. He's undefeated. It's another thing to be undefeated and to lose a set or so much. He hasn't lost a set all season. He's lost 3 total games. And for those of you who don't know tennis, you win 6 games to win a set, and you win 2 sets out of 3 to win a match. So no one is coming near him, and it was just so fascinating to see the crowd. I stood there amongst the crowd, and I just listened to them. They treated him as if he was like folklore. Like people who came to Courts Plus to work out on that Saturday stopped and watched him just because they remembered seeing him playing tennis over the summer. And they had him, a couple guys were sitting there and they were telling the story about, did I ever tell you about the time that Davis fired serves at us? It was insane because his serve is at least 110 miles per hour and it can reach 120. And just listening to the high schoolers watching him saying just how insane he is, and how there was a couple either freshman or sophomore high school tennis players that were just it's intimidating to play on the court next to him. I remember I did once, and it was like he actually said, and it felt like I am in the presence of legend. So he's like this folklore, and he's a monster. He really is, and I think.
Is he as impressive as the stories, or?
Yes. No, yeah, he is. There's a reason he's narrowed his college choices down to 4 Division I tennis. I mean, he's going to play Division I tennis. I mean, you don't get to that point, and you don't lose. I don't care what state you're in or who you're playing. You don't only lose 3 games in an entire regular season in tennis. Like to lose a game is human. So to lose only 3 games is just insane.
Do we know what colleges he's looking at?
Yeah, the 4 colleges he's down to is Creighton, Cleveland State, East Carolina, and UConn. So those are the 4 he's narrowed it down to.
Impressive list.
Yeah, I mean, if you go play Division I sports anywhere, it's impressive, and to have a choice is even more impressive. So yeah, and the fact that he won the state championship 2 years ago. Then the night before the EDC tournament last year, he found out from doctors that he tore his meniscus. So he's done. So he couldn't defend his title, and he just used that as fuel. And his senior year, he's just rolling right now, and I don't think anybody's getting in his way.
And as legendary as Lawley has been, Grand Forks Red River has been equally legendary in the team side of things for North Dakota tennis. They once again won the East Region tournament, although this year was much closer than maybe some people expected, beating Grand Forks Central 3-2. Grand Forks, I guess, is just the tennis community of North Dakota. So they've won every East Region championship since 1996 and have won, I believe, 18 of the last 19 state championships. They're just on a roll. They've got the complete team, doubles and singles, to win the state tournament once again. They would be my obvious pick to win the state tournament, as I'm assuming yours singles pick would be Davis Lawley.
Yeah, I'd bet my life on Lawley. Well, probably not my life. That'd probably be a little drastic. But
yeah, that'd be a huge bet.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to put that in his hands.
Although that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah,
it seems like. So it seems like clear favorites going into the state tournament for singles and the team. So that's as best as we can preview it, considering the dominance that both Lawley and Red River have had these last few years. And with that being said, are we out?
Yeah, I think we're done.
Is this the end of the very first episode?
This is probably the last episode we'll ever do.
Well, it was good while it lasted. I'm Colton Poole, a sports reporter for the Forum, and this has been Chris Murphy, my coworker, and this has been Full Court Press, our first episode of our podcast talking about local sports. And yeah, we're out.
Thanks for listening.